Hello friends, my name is AJ and welcome to the third AP Computer Science FRQ practice video. This is going to be going over the official released College Board AP Computer Science A free response question from 2018, number 2, which is also an ArrayList question. And I'm going to be going over this particular question and I'm going to be solving it with you guys so that you can help get prepared for the 2020 AP exam, which due to the current situation is only FRQ. Without further ado, let's get started. All right, so it says on the top that this question involves reasoning about pair of words that are represented by the following word pair class. So this is actually a very interesting type of question because as you can see on your screen, you actually have two different classes, which means we're going to be working either within both of the classes or we're going to be working with objects from one of the class. So this can kind of help, especially some of you may be wondering, and I actually did get a comment recently on my video asking about this, of actually using objects with, like actual objects and classes that we make with ArrayList. So we're going to be going over that in this video. All right, so let's look at the word pair class. We have a constructor which takes in two strings. The string of the first of the pair, and then a string which is the second of the pair. So really you have a pair of words pretty much. That's all that the word pair is. You have one word and another word and they're paired together. And then we have two get methods. We have the get first, which returns the first string of the object. And we have get second, which returns the second string of this object. Okay? So the implementation of all of these is not shown. We do not have to worry about it, but we know what it does. Okay, and then it says here, you will implement the constructor and another method for the following word pair list class. So when it says implement the constructor and another method, that is actually what we're going to be writing when we're answering the problem. And if we look at the word pair list class, you can see that we have a field which is an ArrayList field with the type as word pair. So this is going to be an ArrayList of word pair objects. This particular thing is called all pairs. So that is the name of the field. Okay, and then here we have a constructor which will be implemented in part A, which takes in a string array of words. Okay, and then here we have what will be implemented in part B, which is a method that returns an integer called num matches. And you can see here it says returns the number of matches as described in part B. So we'll be looking at now part A and part B to be able to fill out and answer the questions. All right, so it says A, write the constructor. So we're being tasked, this is the first one here, we're actually writing the constructor. Write the constructor for the word pair class. The constructor takes an array of string words as a parameter and initializes the instance variable, all pairs, to an array list of word pair objects. So if you think about it, remember, what is the main job of the constructor, right? The main job of the constructor is to initialize the fields. So if you look here at our word pair list class, this constructor here that we're implementing needs to be able to initialize this field that's up here, the all pairs field. And we're going to initialize it with the type of a word pair array list. And in our code, we're actually going to be using this array of strings, right, which is called words as the parameter. We're going to be using that to be able to initialize that particular array list. So it says a word pair object consists of a word from the array paired with a word that appears later in the array. So you have one word and then you're pairing it with a second word. The all pairs list contains word pair objects, words with a words I and words j for every I and j, where 0 is less than or equal to I, which is less than j, which is less than words.length. This may be a little bit complicated for you. We're definitely going to break that down. Each word pair object is added exactly once to the list. So that means that you do not want to have duplicate pairs. The following example illustrate two different word pair list objects. Okay, so here, let's say that our parameter right? Our words parameter was 1, 2, and 3. After the code segment is executed, the all pairs instance variable of example 1 will contain the following word pairs. You will have 1 and 2, 1 and 3, and 2 and 3. So some of the things to think about: you do not have 1, 1, you do not have 2, 2, and you do not have 3, 3. And another thing is you do not have 3, 2, you do not have 3, 1. It's only in this particular order here. So you don't go backwards. You only go forwards through the actual array. You do not end up going backwards. That's something that is good to think about for the logic later. Then you have this a second example. Let's say you have the more, the merrier. You can see that the pairs that are created are the more, the, and remember that it's really this the and this the that are together. It's not a duplicate here. So the merrier, more merrier, the merrier, right? So it's pairing. And you can also see here that you have the merrier here and the merrier here. But again, it's important to remember that this one is the first the, and this one is the second the, right? This the pairs with the merrier the first time, and then this the pairs with the merrier the second time. Okay, now we have this little box here, which often appears, that says class information for this question. So you have the information for the first class, the word pair. You get to see the constructor, right? And we know it's the constructor because it has the same name as the class. And then 2 methods, the get first and the get second. Then over here, you can see that we have the word pair list class, which has our field and 2 methods. All right, so now it says complete the word pair list constructor below. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do, and I've written out the parts here in JGrasp, and the reason, if I didn't mention this before, the reason why we use JGrasp, or at least the reason I use JGrasp, is you don't have autocomplete. So, and technically this doesn't include the 2020 exam now that you're allowed to use an IDE. But in normal exams, you didn't want to usually get used to using something with autocomplete, because if you use autocomplete on an exam that is written on paper, you will not get that feature. So it's very good to be able to physically be able to type in everything out so that you know what you're typing and you're not just blindly, tab entering or whatever to get that certain autocomplete. But of course, since, the 2020 exam, you can use IDEs, then, technically you may be able to use something else like Eclipse, which is another Java IDE with autocomplete and a lot more features, as well as something like IntelliJ IDEA by JetBrains. But for right now, this is just I'm just using JGrasp. It's very simple. It's just one page, as you can see here. And in this, you can just see what I'm typing on my screen. Okay, so the first thing I do is I do open close parentheses, and I'll add my comment so that we, again, for consistency, from previous videos, I always add a comment at the end of my curly brace so that we know exactly what the curly brace, what this matches to. Okay? Now, the first thing we need to do is, because this is a constructor and we're trying to initialize our field, and you can refer back to my class information. We're trying to initialize the all pairs field. In order to create an array list, I have to say this.allPairs equals, I use the new keyword, ArrayList, right? And then inside of my arrow brackets or slanted brackets, depending on what you call them, you want to put the type. And because I'm trying to initialize an array list of word pair objects, I put word pair right here. So now that I have initialized the all pairs field, I can now be able to use methods to add different things into my array list. So the first thing I want to do is I have my input words, right? I want to physically loop through all of my words so that I can find a pair, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I is, and now we have to think about the bounds. I want to go from the first word. Let me give an example like this right here, this phrase. Let's say I had this as my input. I want to go from my first word to the second to last word. Now you may be wondering, why do I want to do that? Well, let's think about this, right? If I want to pair this word with the next word after it, right? And then I want to loop through all of these. So I start out with the, and then I have a second loop that looks for more, the merrier, right? In my initial searching, once I hit the, and I then will hit merrier, I do not need to go to merrier at the end because there's nothing for me to loop through. Therefore, the first loop should only go through the first elements, basically all the elements except for the last one. So to do that, I have to do I is less than, and then the words dot length minus 1, like that. So I go from the first element to the second to last element. Then I want to increment. I set my increment to 1, meaning that every time I loop, my counter increases by 1. I'm going to then do open and closed parentheses. Now open and close curly brace. Now, after I have done this, I want to have a second for loop, because what I want to do is, let's say I'm looping through my phrase here, and I start my first iteration of this outer for loop is at the. I then want a second for loop that's going to look at everything to the right of it and then pair it up with the original one. What I mean by this is, let's say I'm at the, right? I want a second loop that loops through more, the merrier, and pairs those each with the, so that it gives me the more, the, and the merrier. Then in the second iteration of the outer loop, I start with more. I then want that inner for loop to look at everything to the right of it, so that I can pair more with the and more with merrier. That's going to happen again the last time with the, and it's going to then pair with merrier. So I want one more for loop inside of this. Now, where do I want to start my for loop? Well, I want to start my for loop at one more, right, than the original place of my first outer loop. Because, let's say again, I'm here at the, my second loop, I do not want to start it at the position of the, because then I'll have a duplicate. I'll have the, and I don't want that. I just want the, and then the next thing more. So I actually want to start my loop at one more than the current location of I, the counter variable I. And I can say J, and in terms of where I end my loop, it's going to be words.length, because this time I'm ending it at the end. Instead of ending it one less, I do want to go to the last element inside of my words array. And then lastly, I do J++ as my counter. So now I have an outer for loop and an inner loop, just like that. Now, the logic for this, especially, the first time when you think about it, it may be a little bit more confusing. But if you kind of work through these examples, and this matches up with this very complicated looking thing up here, right? I start out here at that I is always going to be less than J. And that makes sense because J is I plus 1. It's always going to be 1 greater than J. J needs to be less than words.length, which is right here. J is less than words.length. And then I is going to be equal to 0 at the beginning here. And the reason why also that I needs to be less than words.length minus 1 is because if this was words.length without the minus 1, then there could be a point where J and I are equal. And remember, in my condition written in this problem, I can never be greater than J, or greater than or equal to J. So actually this very complicated expression, when you then match it up with this nested for loop, it does make sense. All right, so now that we have done this part, we want the last line of code. And the last line of code is simply to be able to add a new word pair object to the array list. And we actually need to create a new word pair object. So I can say word pair, new pair, right, equals, I use the new keyword in order to create a new object, and then word pair. And now I can call its constructor. So we can look at the problem to reference our constructor. All right, so then you can look at the class information for this question, and you can see that under word pair, the constructor has the first and the second string. It takes in two strings. So now I can put in the first word and the second word. The first word is going to be at position I. So I say words, bracket I. Just like that. And then I will have words, bracket J as my second word, right? My first word is I, my second word is J. After this, I will close my constructor for the word pair on object and finish it. Now I want to add my new pair to my array list. So to do that, I say this dot all pairs dot add, and then I can add new pair, just like that. That is the solution for part A to create the constructor for the word pair list class. And again, a little recap of what this does. It first initializes the all pair field so that it now has a new empty array list. And then I have a nested for loop to be able to add pairs of words to my new array list. And that is the solution for part A. Now we can move on to part B, which, if I scroll down, says, write the word pair list num matches. This method returns the number of word pair objects in all pairs for which the two strings match. Okay? And now it gives me an example. So it has the red fox, the red. It says, after the code segment has executed, the all pairs instance variable of example 3 will contain the following word pair in some order. The pairs in which the first string matches the second string are shaded for illustration. So you can see that after we get all of our pairs, there are two which have words that are equal to each other, just like that, or they are equivalent. And because there are two of these, that means that it should return 2. All right, so and now we just have to solve this. And actually, this is easier, potentially. Usually part B is harder than part A. This case, actually, part B is easier than part A, simply because we did the hard part up here, which is making our constructor and actually getting this word pair list. But now we actually have it, and all we have to do is simply traverse it, figure out which ones have words that are the same, and then increase a counter. So I'll add the method comment again for consistency, and I now need to initialize a counter variable. So I'll just say matches equals 0, just like that. And we will then increment this every time we find a match. So now I want to do a for loop to be able to traverse my word pair, or my all pairs array list of word pair objects. A lot of pairs and a lot of words. All right, so I can say for in I equals 0, I is less than this dot all pairs dot size. Remember, when we're looking for the number of elements inside of an array list, we use the size method. And then when we're looking for the how many elements are inside of an array, we use dot length. All right, and then I can do I++, just like this. And then I can simply say word pair equals, because now I'm trying to get the pair because I'm traversing my all pairs array list. Now for every single iteration, I need to get the actual pair. So I say this dot all pairs dot get I. Just like this. So now I have this pair, which I can now analyze. All I have to do is I just say if my pair dot, and if you remember up here, I have two methods for my word pair. I have get first, which gets the first word, and get second, which gets the second word. I just have to say now that if pair dot get first dot equals, I can use my equals. Now, in the last video, I use a double equal sign, or the equals comparison operator. But someone mentioned in the comment section that you can also use, and it's definitely true, you can also use the equals method, string method, to be able to compare two different strings. So since in the last video I used double equals, I thought in this video I would just do dot equals. Remember, they do the same thing, they compare different strings. So I can say if pair.getFirst dot equals pair.getSecond, just like this. And remember, I have to put this inside of, it looks a little bit weird, but I have to obviously put the parentheses for get second, even though I'm still within the equals parentheses. And now I have to add one extra parentheses at the end because this parentheses goes with the equals. So I need to close up the parentheses for my if statement. I can then do open and close curly brackets for that. And I can simply then here say that if the first word is equal to the second word, I can increment my matches variable. All right, so after I, count how many times there are duplicates, I simply have to return matches, which will return the number of times that the first word in the pair equals the second word, or basically that there are duplicates within my pairs. All right, so that is the answer for part B. Now this one is definitely, and a lot of people may get confused by this, because we're using now objects with array lists. This is a little bit more of a difficult question, even compared to the delimiters question that we had last time in the second practice video. And definitely, working with different classes for objects is definitely very important to know, especially in computer science, because you don't always want to store just strings or numbers. Sometimes you want to store things that are a little bit more complex, in this case such as pairs. And we can use ArrayList in the same way that we would with everything else. However, we can now use new methods and new fields of our new objects that are stored inside of these array lists. All right, everyone, thank you for watching. If you definitely have any questions on this a little bit more difficult section, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll definitely be able to answer them. If you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe for more content. And as always, thanks for watching. And actually, in fact, before I cut off, I do want to say that thank you for getting us to 100 subscribers. I greatly appreciate your support. And more videos will be coming, again, every weekday from Monday to Friday. I plan to release a video. There may be a few days, though, as we get closer to the actual AP exams. I am a student as well, so I will be having to prepare for those as well. So if there are not necessarily regular uploads on those few days, then definitely I will have videos throughout the week, especially to help you guys with AP Computer Science, and just other videos on my channel, such as the iOS and Swift tutorials that I do. But if there is a little bit of a break, I apologize. It is simply just because I am a student too, and I do have to also get prepared, just like you all, for different exams and such. But again, thank you for 100 subscribers. I greatly appreciate it, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.